So glad that you are here. Nothing is working on the mixer. Music is loud. But hey, I'm going to fade it out anyway. Hey everyone, Jeff DeVerter. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist here at Rackspace Technology. So glad to have you with us here today. And back in the home, I've been traveling a lot lately and glad to be here. So it's going to be a great episode today. And I've got a really interesting guest. I think you're going to really enjoy getting to hear from her, an author. Yes, that's right. And but let's go through some of the housekeeping details. So first of all, welcome to the show. And first, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Who are you and where are you? So introduce yourself in the comments. Just let me know. Debbie and I brag that this is a global audience, so you've got to prove her right. Tell us where in the world you're coming in from. Now, if you want to get a hold of us, it's easy to do. Send us an email over at solve@rackspace.com. Whole production team gets it. Megan gets it. Producer Daniel gets it. Although last week it was producer Megan because Daniel was on vacation. And I get it, of course, as well. So I'd love to hear from you there. If you have any ideas for the show, you have some guest ideas, people you want to introduce us to, maybe even yourself. Maybe you are a brilliant individual who's got something to share with the world, like Sean Gardner would. Sean in the comments. Sean, glad to see you. And life has settled down a little, Sean. It's time to get breakfast. So let's get that on the schedule. Maybe next week. That'd be great. Oh, I'm out of town next week. Maybe a week after. All right. Let's progress on. So I also have some other good news for people like Sean, who's a regular listener. The podcast is returning this week. There will be a new drop of an audio-only podcast. You know that over the past, well, probably about year, we've only had audio from this live stream. And that's because we've been figuring out exactly how we want that program to be. And so there are elements that are the same. A lot of the musical styling is the same, but the guests that we have, well, we're going a little deeper with them as individuals, not just the technology that sets them apart as leaders. So Mark Oretta from Job Target is first up this week. I'm not sure if we posted that yet, but it will be very shortly if it isn't. So make sure that you're subscribed. You can go anywhere where podcasts are found. There's a little list of them all across the bottom of the screen. So if you're not a subscriber, I encourage you to do so because fresh content is coming back. All right, with that, it's my great pleasure to get to introduce you to Debbi Varela. Now, Debbie is a brand new racker, but not brand new to the tech industry, not brand new to helping people be better at what they do. She is just a few weeks in. She's just going through onboarding, but really an amazing person, and I'm excited to get to introduce you to her. So let's bring Debbie up to the stage. Here she is. Debbie, welcome to Cloud Talk Live.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
So glad that you are. So it's early morning. You've gotten the kids out of the house. They all have clothes on that they agree with, and ready to tear into the day. So we'll call that a win for the beginning.
Sounds good.
Hey Debbie, so what's your title here? What do you do for us at Rackspace?
So I am the Senior Director of Global Sales Enablement at Rackspace. So really, our job is to prepare all of our revenue-facing teams with all of the content, tools, and information they need to have value-driven conversations with their prospects and customers.
It almost sounds like you've said that a few hundred times in the last few weeks as you've introduced yourself around. I mean, it rolled right off the tongue.
Definitely not.
So, but let's talk about that for a minute. So sales enablement, as our loyal listeners will know, we tend to spend a lot of time here talking about getting into the tech of things, but this is a little bit of a different angle, and that is how we enable people to have a conversation about tech. And while your job is very much targeted towards helping salespeople themselves have that conversation, I believe it's an important thing to widen that aperture even a little bit as well, because every individual, I always say everyone's in sales. It doesn't matter what your job is, because you are a representative for the organization you work for.
I agree with you.
So let's talk about that. What makes enabling somebody to have these conversations unique and challenging? I mean, I know some of the answers because the tech stuff here is hard, but let's take it from your point of view.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to enabling folks within any company. Honestly, it's not just specific to Rackspace, but sellers have a lot coming at them all the time. So we're competing with all the things that you can possibly think of, which is, usually it's like they want to sell. They don't want to go sit in a training. There's also challenges just around getting the right and specific and relevant content for them, so they feel like it's worth their time to actually
Yeah.
sit in, 30-minute training or 60-minute training or whatever it may be. So those are two of the top ones, but there is a whole host of challenges that it come when it comes to being enablement professional within an organization.
Yeah. Now this is not new muscles for you. You've been doing this for a little while. Um, but it wasn't your first job. First job out of college, not quite exactly sales enablement. You were feet on the street selling beer.
I was. Yep. First job out of college, I sold beer for an Anheuser-Busch distributor in San Diego. So that was fun. I learned a lot. I mean, talk about getting thrown into the deep end.
No kidding. What was the big takeaway from that job?
Um, Building relationships for
Mm,
me, that was really primarily it. I started kind of at the bottom at the beer distributor, and I worked my way up to actually just I gravitated more towards training. So I worked over into being
yeah.
a brand ambassador. But one of the things that they always had me do was go into I worked on premise, so bars and restaurants.
Yeah.
I'd have to go into bars and restaurants who didn't want to buy our product. They're like, send Debbie in.
Mm.
she'll get them to buy just by building relationships, listening to the customer, being empathetic, and just having those real conversations.
What a great set of skills to get at the front side of your career. And, I think that translates extraordinarily well over into technology because sometimes technologists can be we can be a little introverted. I maybe don't suffer from that, at least not on this show. But it's a great lesson to learn. And if you were going to give our fellow technologists a little hint, how to have that first conversation, how to be a little more social, how to build relationships, what's a good icebreaker? How do people get started?
Yeah, for me, it's just really being about being genuine
Mm,
and really honestly care about the person that you're talking to and
yeah,
listen to them. That's one of the things I think that not just sellers, but just everyone, when you're having a conversation, to be in the moment, right?
yeah,
Don't be thinking about what you're going to say next or what you have to do after the call or all the things. Just be in the moment, listen to what they're saying, and really try to understand, like, how can I provide value to this person? Not
yeah.
just what's in it for me, right?
Right, right. Well, that's a really good point, especially as you're talking to salespeople. It's not just what you can get out of the situation. Especially as a younger person, I was very introverted and I was very shy and I was very concerned that what I was going to say was going to embarrass me. And I would tell this story a lot, but my friend Rob we were in high school, and this goes back to high school, and before school, all the guys are hanging out together, and I don't even remember what he said, but he said something really stupid, and everybody laughed at him. And I thought, oh boy, Rob's out now. But by lunch, nobody even remembered it. I don't remember it to
Yeah.
this day, but nobody remembered it. And it was a big lesson for me. And that is, he was having a great time. And yeah, he stepped in it. And the lesson I learned from that, and as I go forward, is a great way to kind of hide from that is just to ask questions. Because quite frankly, one, you get to learn about the person. If you're in sales, nothing's better than to learn about a situation. But two, if you're asking questions, that means the other person's doing most of the talking, and it saves you a lot.
100%. Yeah, it shifts the focus from you to them. Also, it
Yeah.
helps you, to your point, understand. A lot of times I think it's it's easy or it's comfortable
Yeah.
to start talking about like us and like let's say we're talking about Rackspace, right? It's easy to
Yeah.
have a conversation about a customer and just start talking about all the amazing things we do at Rackspace,
Right.
but really it's probably more in your benefit to maybe hold back just a tad and listen to like what do they want to achieve? What's important to them? And
Yeah.
then kind of behind the scenes, work with your team to understand, okay, with all the amazing things we do at Rackspace, how can we help them and come back and have a more in-depth conversation around those ideas.
Yeah, we have this amazing here at Rackspace Customer Experience Center, and it's staffed by some amazing folks where we bring customers in to do quarterly business reviews and just engage with our customers. And they do something there that is magical. And every time an account team comes in and they want to bring a customer in, they have this fancy agenda, and the team always adjusts it, and they say it always has to start with a section where we call it the voice of the customer. Customer talks first. I mean, we do introductions, but when it comes to giving an update, the customer talks first. And what always happens, I'm one of the people who tends to be there to present something, but everybody who's there to present has their decks open, and we're actively changing the deck to use the words that they use to speak to things that concern them and so forth. But hearing the customer, hearing their challenges, and hearing their vernacular, their words, makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're showing one of the what I think is a key strength in any type of like sales role or sales manager role is being agile, being in the moment, right? Trying to, even though
Do
you have a plan,
yeah.
being able to shift.
Yeah. Don't get too comfortable with your plan. That's for absolute sure. So, but let's transfer that. So now let's talk about it specifically in technology. And you have done this for some amazing technology companies, and that can be challenging as you equip people to have conversations. Not just we're talking about salespeople who sometimes this is their first technology sales role, so they've got the technology to learn, but they also have the products and services to learn, and those two
Yeah.
things can be really a mountain to climb. And so if it's easy to go in and just start asking questions as the salesperson, get the customer talking, but at some point you've got to feed some brilliance into there. So what are some hints, some tactics for helping, people come up to speed on these sorts of things that can be quite complex?
For like an internal racker, are you
Yeah, let's say
asking?
for a
Yeah.
racker or anybody in a technical role who needs to then go
Yeah.
represent those products and services.
That's like the $1 million question all the time, Jeff.
Without
It's
giving
like,
away our secret sauce, by the way,
well,
because you've
no,
got
it's
an
just
amazing plan.
I do have an amazing plan, but I think that as an enablement professional, that's always our challenge. And since I've started at Rackspace, I've heard people even say this to me over and over again, which is like, I know you're drinking from the fire hose. And even other companies, I've heard that before. And it's
Yeah,
true, just because there's so much information. How
there
do you
is.
digest it? How do you retain it? Right. And then how do you even apply it
Yep.
with folks, right? Internally or externally. And so one of the things that I just continue to do for myself and what I try to embed in a lot of the sales enablement programs that I've established at organizations, it's almost like an IV or like a constant
Slow
drip.
drip, slow drip.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're not going to get it all in the first 2 weeks. I mean, I don't even remember what the exact numbers are right now, but there's some study out there that says you only remember like 10% of everything in like the
Yeah,
first, week. So for me, it's just about like reinforcement, doing it over again, kind of building on what you know. And then to me, the important piece is not just learning and kind of like storing it,
yeah.
but learning and using it in your conversations with folks, right? Because it'll start to solidify.
Yeah, making it practical is for me, that's where it seeps in. I love to learn things. And welcome, by the way, Sydney from Dubai. Glad that you're here. Um, and right now for me, that's video editing. I'm learning a lot of new stuff about video editing. So once the day is done, dinner is done, I'm sitting down at not I can't sit here, so I sit down in the kitchen, and I'll watch a video on a new technique inside of this tool, and then I've got to go apply that, because if you just watch it, I mentally know it's capable, but I don't know how to do it. You've got to
Mhm.
actually apply that.
Yeah, you actually just put a light bulb on in my head when you were saying that too. Another thing that I think is really important as you start a new company or just in general is
Mm.
always being curious, right? Because if
Hmm.
you're always curious, you're always trying to find more information and learn more and build upon because you are genuinely curious about learning.
Yeah, so true. In fact, that's what my recommendation whenever I have the chance to go talk to new employees, especially new sales folks, is whatever company you work for. In our case, it's going to rackspace.com/case studies. Sorry, it's a slight pitch. But go read how the technology, you're not, as a salesperson, you're not going to sit down in front of an AWS console and build a solution. But if you can learn about how other companies have done it and applied those tools that are current in the market, well then it helps you connect the dots between the elastic engineering allows companies to do these things. Well, here's the difference it made over at Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, for instance, and so that's what I always recommend to them. I say set a timer, make it whatever day you want, but spend your coffee break, your waking up in the morning reading a few case studies, just so that you can figure out how to apply that.
It's great advice, especially because it
Well,
makes it real.
yeah. So a question for you, also. So I mentioned in the beginning you've written a little book, and so let's talk about that for a second, because I think it's really important. I love the analogy and how that applies to enabling sales teams.
Yeah. So I did. It's a small book, but it was designed small so that you could read it in like a plane flight, visiting your next customer. But the book is really just based on bringing the two worlds of sports coaching
Yeah.
and sales coaching into one, because it's my opinion. I've been involved in both worlds my pretty much my whole life, and there's just so many similarities. And then when I started to almost like collide the two worlds into
Yeah.
my day to day, it was like, this is so much easier.
Yeah, when you connect those brain cells together, and you told me before how that happened. And by the way, lots of great folks. Tampa's here, Malaysia's here. I don't know if we've had Malaysia before. I'm so glad that you're here, and of course, Colony, Texas. Welcome as well, and Massachusetts. So, but you were sitting. You've got youngerish kids. So,
Thank you.
and they've learned that soccer is their new thing, and your husband gets to help with the team. And little conversation, the light bulb went off for you at the dinner table, going, "This is the same conversation I had at work."
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's how the book was inspired. So I can share that story really quick because it is quite funny. But my husband started coaching my son's soccer team, and he played soccer when he was growing up as well. And my background is I have my degree in kinesiology, and I've
Mm,
worked within that field for a long time, as well as sales and enablement. And so it was, being in that world all day, you get kind of focused on what you do and you don't really think about how it applies. And as my son started to coach, as my husband started to coach my son's soccer team, I realized the conversations at the dinner table started to change. Like we were talking about the exact same things, the
yeah,
exact same challenges, the exact same strategies to get people to like listen, to stay engaged, to do
right.
what you need them to do to have the behavior change. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to just write a book. And like I told you, Jeff, I know there's a lot of books on this already, but I think what just inspired me to do this was it was my own experiences, and it was my own kind of action plan around
Yeah,
like how do I apply this in my world of sales.
that's really cool. So, and the title of the book is.
It's called Put Me in Coach.
I like it. You talked about also in our prep about you've got the coach, and then with as far as the kids are concerned, there's the team mom, and who's
Yeah.
doing what in this relationship.
Yeah, that was a fun story. So I was talking to my son as I was getting ready to publish the book and just thinking about how I wanted to talk about the book. And I asked my son, I said, "Hey, when you're out there on the field, is it's her name is Lauren. So I was like, is
Yeah.
Miss Lauren the one that you feel like makes the difference, or do you feel like it's someone else?" And he's like, "No, it's my coach. My coach is the one
Mm,
who helps me." And that
right.
was for me when I was like, I know. See, like everybody needs a sales coach.
Well, I think, and we can apply that as well, not just to sales, but really any part of the career. I think we all benefit from having a coach, and the coach brings certain characteristics, to your career, to your success, your ability to, um, somebody who's looking from the outside and can say, "Hey, good job on that, but let's talk about these things over there." And maybe if you pull a few things from the book, what does the coach bring to the mix?
I think the coach, well, first of all, for me, a good coach is someone who walks alongside you and helps you
Mm,
kind of see some of your blind spots because we all have them.
yeah.
And so I think that is, for me, the most important role of a coach is to just really help you kind of slow down, take a step back, and realize like these are some things that I could tweak. Maybe they're small, maybe they're large, but these
Mm,
are things that I could try that also could be out of my comfort zone, and I need a little bit of encouragement. Right, to help me get to that next level because sometimes people do feel stuck. They feel like they're on a plateau. They feel like they need something different, but they don't
yeah.
necessarily know how to get it either.
Yeah. And I think the balance of a coach is really important as well because the coach is not a micromanager. The coach is not running alongside, the player saying, "Okay, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. I know how to run. I know how to run." Um, and so when we take that analogy and we pull it back into sales training and sales enablement, I mean, here we're clearly talking to leadership. We're talking to line level managers. We're talking to managers of managers. How do you instill in somebody the coach mindset where somebody is enabling and not doing?
You know, I think that's the question I get the most is like
Mm,
we've got all these fantastic managers and they've been these fantastic sellers, but we need them to help coach. How do we get
yeah.
them to actually coach their team and help build their team? And so this is definitely a challenge that I think I've faced in really every company that I've been at. And for me, it's really about that person's mindset. So we need
Mm,
to help them shift their mindset from being that player to being that coach. Managers they have a tricky job because they have to balance like multiple roles,
Yeah.
right? They have to balance being a manager and performance managing versus like being a coach, as well as probably sometimes being a seller.
Yeah.
So they have to understand like time management. They have to understand communication. They have to understand leadership styles. They have to understand so many things. I mean, it's a very complex role, but it's such a rewarding role once
Yeah.
you really get into the rhythm, because then you can see yourself, you know, excelling, but also helping others grow and reaching their own full potential as well.
Love that. I love that. And I think one of the hardest parts of that is, so often I was just having this conversation over on the podcast side, and we were talking about technologists who, are really strong in architecture, whatever it might be. And with that success, somebody comes along and says, "Hey, how'd you like to lead some architects?" And now they've got to go from being hands-on keyboard to enabling those that do. And that's a really hard shift. So is there, I would imagine that's the same when you take a super strong and successful salesperson and now say, how'd you like to lead some salespeople?
That's exactly what I see. Like all the time. Is
Yeah.
right, folks that are like really, really good at sales, and they're like, "You're so great at sales. We want you to go be a manager." And they're like, "Whoa, hold on." Like, I mean, it sounds great, right? But then they get into the manager role and they're like, "Oh my gosh, how am I supposed to manage?" So I think,
Right.
that's a really important thing, for sales enablement departments or organizations, or if you're solo enablement, to really put focus and invest in creating any kind of manager enablement or transition plan for someone going from that kind of icy seller mindset to manager mindset, because you do need to teach them these skills and these
You do.
tools. And yeah, and sometimes they just need a little bit of reinforcement and practice to build that muscle. It's not like it's not there. I think when you and I talked first, I feel like everyone has this inside of them innately, and we have to unlock it, right? And once we unlock it and build it and reinforce it, then that's where the behavior change comes.
Well, and it sort of goes back to our beginning conversation. How do you make a friend? How do you build a relationship? Because that really is what it becomes. It becomes this relationship. Now, there are tangible ins and outs. I mean, these people have to perform, they have to do the things, and but not unlike a soccer player. I mean, I've got Ted Lasso images flying through my head right now, by the way, and because the team as an entity needs to win, the company needs to win, and in order for that to happen, the individuals have to know their part. They have to be enabled. They have to have the tools that they need, and they have to have that opportunity to
And they have to
succeed.
trust too. For me, trust is a huge thing, right? And
Right.
that was the one thing that I really wanted. I saw a lot. I see it a lot just in the business world, but like I really saw it on the field this last season with the
Mm,
soccer team, which was like, a lot of times the players or our sellers, like they do feel uncomfortable and like
yeah.
they're not totally sure. But if they trust their manager coach to guide them in the right direction,
Yeah.
like they'll kind of take that next step into that dark tunnel because they trust them, even if they
Yeah.
don't necessarily see the light at the end, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
trust is huge. Clear communication is also huge, because if a coach and a manager is very clear with their folks on what we need to accomplish, it
Yeah.
also helps everyone kind of, they have that shared accountability together, which is just like a
Mm,
team on the field, right? We know we want to win. We know our strategy, how to get there, because it was clearly communicated. I trust my coach, so
yeah.
I'm going to give it everything I've got, even if we don't win, because then we'll learn from what we didn't maybe do.
That's awesome. I love that so much. So any parting words of wisdom then for our sales leaders who are out there? They're heading off into their day. If they're here in the U.S., they're just getting started. Yeah, let's encourage them for just a second. Give them something they can go work on.
Yeah, I would say if sales coaching is so important. If you just
Mm,
invest 5 to 10 minutes a day, even if you've never done it before, to go on the internet and even just Google something, there's so many resources out there just to learn. But for me, if I was a sales leader, that would be my number one thing that I would really just try to invest in, even if it was just a few minutes a day, and practicing that with my team, even if it's uncomfortable or awkward,
yeah,
because it will only continue to get better.
that's right. That's such good. Thank you so much, Debbie. Debbie, it was great to have you on. You're going to have to come back and share some of the successes once you've gotten your feet a little dirtier here inside of Rackspace and made the rounds.
You got it. I'll be back anytime you need me.
I love it. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.
You
All
too.
right. Well, folks, let's press on. I've got a few more things I can show you here because I want to tell you about next week. Now, next week is going to be a little bit different of an episode, sort of like this one was. But here in the U.S., next week is the week that leads us into what we call Memorial Day, and Memorial Day is a time when we celebrate here at Rackspace those who have served in the military and have helped to build this amazing country that we have the opportunity to live in. Now, as part of that, we get Monday off. Also, for those in the northern states, it tends to be when they bring their grills out for the first time. Here in the southern states, they never went away. But what I want to do is have a technology conversation all around the concept of grilling. So I've invited my good friend Robin Medlin Linders. Now, she is known online as the Grill Girl, and her mission, she's been grilling for years. I've known her for probably a decade now, and have even contributed a little bit to her blog because I do love to grill. So we're going to have a great conversation all about the technology around grilling. There's all kinds of new grills, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, sensors, all kinds of stuff is finding its way into the grill. So if you want to learn about what's going on, latest and greatest in tech in the grilling market, well, head on over to this show next week, 8:30 a.m. Central Time, just like Cloud Talk Live always is. And I cannot wait to see you there. Ooh, I have another picture. There's Robin right there. She even has a cookbook, and that can be found, I think, even in some Target stores. So she's a pretty amazing lady living over in Florida, here in the U.S. And I can't wait to have her on. Oh, where did I go? Have her on the show next week. All right, folks, that is going to do it for this week's episode, and we will see you next week with Robin. There she is, the Grill Girl. Until then, have a great week, everybody.